comes on too. We put her on.
Is she?
Welcome to Gotta Ask, hosted by Ray Brownlee. This is a presentation of Ump Life, the premier provider of customized umpire accessories and unique game use amenities. Tonight's guest is professional baseball umpire Jansen Visconti. Please type your questions in the chat box below, and we will get them to Jansen as soon as we can. This video will be posted to the Ump Life page after tonight's show for additional viewing. Please keep in mind, this feed is about 30 to 40 seconds behind what you are seeing. And now, I give you your host, Ray Brownlee.
Thanks, Tommy. Hi, everybody. I've got a great guest tonight. Newly hired MLB umpire Jansen Visconti. How you doing, Jansen?
I'm doing well, Ray. Thanks for having me. I hope you're doing well and safe and healthy up there.
It's cold today, but weather's supposed to turn next week, so we'll be fine. Just missing baseball. I guess you are.
Good deal. Absolutely, we all are.
What have you been up to?
You know what? A whole lot of nothing. Just hanging out. Obviously, under the conditions, there's not a whole lot we can do. One of the approved outdoor activities, if you want to call it that, is fishing in Pennsylvania. So, kind of taking that up last week or so. So I've been throwing some lines in the water, pass the time.
You catching much?
No, no, not yet.
Wow. Okay, let's kick it off. 10-year pro.
Yep.
What were you doing before that, before you decided to go to umpire school?
Man, you know, I grew up and I was playing baseball all the way through. And then when we were about 10 years old, me and the little group of guys that I was running around with at the time, they were playing in the minor leagues of Little League, and I happened to be playing in the major leagues of the Little Leagues at the time. And you know, I would go watch my friends play in the minors, and they always needed some help umpiring wise. And obviously I had no idea what I was doing, but that's initially where I got my start. And I, you know, just started working up from there. And I ended up graduating high school, went to college, went to Penn State, graduated in 3.5 years for the sole purpose to go to umpire school.
Wow.
I had known that I wanted to give this a shot probably since I was, 13 or 14. I had known that I had wanted to try this at least and give it a shot. I knew in doing research about the profession or the industry, knowing that the odds aren't very good. I did go to college. Like I said, I went to Penn State for 3.5 years and then graduated in December of 2009. And January of 10, I was enrolled at the Wendell Umpire School.
Wow. So your plan was, I'm going to try and pursue a professional baseball career.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I was dead set on it.
Because we got a lot of guys going to your school and the other academy,
Sure.
just to better themselves. So different missions, but it's the same idea as I'm going to become a better umpire no matter what happens, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we tell our students, even at umpire school, is that regardless of what your intentions are of coming to umpire school, your goal should be to be the best possible umpire leaving here. And not only whenever you leave here, you go home and, continue to try and get better and better and better, but also make those around you better and give them the information and the knowledge necessary to be successful.
Yeah, that's one thing my page is known for. We try to, everything has to be positive. And sometimes there is negative, but we got to turn a negative into a positive. So if you don't get hired, there is life after umpire school.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so let's go back to 2010. You enroll. You're how much umpiring had you done prior to that? Like how high of a level?
At the time, probably it would have been like Legion baseball, which around here is probably summer league, like what, 16 to 18, something like that. Mm-hmm.
Well, decent baseball.
Yeah, I mean, some half decent baseball. Not the best. Obviously, I didn't take the route like some people did and work the independent circuits and summer collegiate leagues and things of that nature. But we all have our own paths.
I don't think there's
to get to the show.
I don't think there's a defined roadmap to actually do it, right?
No, and that's the beauty of it.
Sure.
No, and that's the beauty of our profession.
And like you could have a guy who's been an umpire for 35 years and wants to come to umpire school. And
Yep.
there's a possibility he could have been doing something wrong for 35 years.
Absolutely.
And the approach at umpire school would be to have you could actually build an umpire with no experience. And
No doubt.
yeah.
And in fact, sometimes we tell our students we actually prefer that because,
Sure.
like you just stated, over 35 years of making the same mistake, you almost do it subconsciously at that point. You don't even know you're doing it. Right. So if you don't, if you've never umpired a baseball game in your life, then you don't have any habits to break. So, you know, from the standpoint of being a student, you don't have any bad habits to break if you haven't done it before, as opposed to somebody who's done it for 35 years. It might be a little bit more difficult to overcome some of the deficiencies you had that you don't even know you're doing. So
Okay, so you
but we
go ahead.
but we get students, you know, from all kinds of age groups or age brackets. I mean,
I've seen
what
it.
you just what you just described. I mean, we get so many guys, I would say at least 5 a year, that it's a retirement gift from their family. You know,
Sure.
they've umpired for decades, and you know, the family went out and got them a trip to umpire school as a retirement gift. So
It's like a 50-year-old going to fantasy baseball camp.
yeah, absolutely.
So yeah.
Absolutely. And those guys always have a blast. They
Mhm.
love it.
So after you graduate umpire school, you go down to the evaluation camp, right?
Yeah.
And you do well, you get a job. So then
Mhm.
you go home for 4 or 5 months and they send you to the Gulf Coast League.
Yep.
How long were you there? Because I know you got promoted pretty quick.
I did get promoted that summer. The summer or the season would have started, I think, right after Father's Day. So we'll say the middle of June, somewhere in there. I was promoted to the New York Penn League in early August. So I probably spent 5 or 6 weeks in the GCL. And then I spent about the last 4 weeks up in the New York Penn League.
Did you ever make it to Batavia, New York?
You know what? I didn't.
Wow.
Never made it. My short
Oh.
time in the Penn League, I didn't make it because coming around the following season, I only worked one game in the Penn League and I got another promotion. So,
Wow. And what
Yeah.
happened next after that?
So after getting promoted to the Penn League, went to that off season, went and worked instructional baseball down in Florida for another 6 weeks. That took me into the middle of October. And that off season, I think it was just after Thanksgiving. So late November, got a phone call from Brent Rice and wanted to know if I wanted to become a member of the Wendelstedt Umpire School staff. And obviously I was chomping at the bit. So I eagerly accepted his offer. In January went down there and began that half of my career, being a instructor at the Wendelstedt Umpire School. And it's something that I still do to this day.
Yeah.
I think every January, it's a good refresher on the rules side of it for me, as well as the rest of our staff. And obviously, we take great pride in finding the best umpires and training them and developing them, and hopefully they're the next wave of major league umpires.
Nice. So you've been doing that 9 years at Wendelstedt, and you mentioned Brent Rice, a great guy, a friend of mine, a friend of everybody's. Yeah, he had that job for a long time and moved on to other things, but he's still involved in the game. Former pro umpire. There's some good shots of the website right now. It's the new website looks great, by the way.
Yeah, Junior Valentine really took the lead with that one. He did a great job. Brent, obviously, learned so much from Brent over the years. You were speaking to what a great guy is, and he not only taught me things about baseball, but he taught me about things off the field. And year after I was hired, we hired a guy by the name of Junior Valentine, and I call him Bryce Jr.
Right.
he's the reincarnate. So it's like Brent never left. Where Brent left off, Junior picked up and really does a bang out job with everything with umpire school.
I've been lucky enough to come down and see you guys quite a few times, and that's one thing I notice is the staff are working nonstop. It seems like even to get half an hour with you alone is pretty tough because you guys are working, and what people don't see is behind the scenes. But one thing I noticed about the staff and the ownership, you guys all get along fantastically well. It's a family more than a job.
Yeah, I mean, Hunter tells the students at umpire school that, when their day is over at 4 or 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever time the day is over, they get to go back and rest and relax. The day is really just beginning for us. We have to go home and do a lot of administrative things. We have to do reviews from that day. We have to get our material prepared for the next day. So we run our staff pretty hard. But, along with that, we try to create that brotherhood environment, that fraternity, that, it's a tight bond, and we may bicker like brothers and we may fight like brothers,
Sure.
Every now and again, but we have a bond like brothers that you can't break. And I think that's something special.
When did you get to go to the Arizona or Fall League to actually work?
Yeah, so my first trip to the Arizona Fall League would have been in 2017. So I worked in 2014. I got promoted to the International League. Worked with a couple of guys by the name of John Byrne, Doug Vines. Only got that was my first full season in 2015. 2014, got promoted in August. I worked with Seth Buckminster for a minute. I worked with Dave Susi. I worked with John Sapphire. I worked with a hodgepodge group of guys. And then the following year, 2015, worked with John Byrne, Doug Vines. 16, I worked with quite possibly the most fun year I've had in my whole career. But my crew chief was Derek Malika and Ryan Addington, who's actually on the call-up list as well.
Right.
That might have been my most fun year. And then 17 was with James Rackley and Charlie Ramos. And after that season, went to the Fall League.
One thing I noticed when I'm making trips, Buffalo, Syracuse, or Rochester, to see guys that I know, they're on the road together for 140 games. You can tell they care about each other. It's every night. It's a grind, and I watch them interact. And even after the game, we'll go out for dinner or something, and that they're together so much hours of the day. But they're doing a job, but they're competing. That is really hard.
Yeah, it's a kind of a strange angle when you look at it that way. That we're so close and we're so tight, but we're all competing for the same spot, right, and same end goal. And there's just not a lot of those jobs to go around. And it is kind of strange when you think of it from that angle. But I think most of us as active, whether minor league umpires or major league umpires, or I guess major league umpires wouldn't be involved, but as minor league umpires, I don't think we necessarily think about it like that when we're actually doing the job.
Sure.
Because I think if you get caught up looking at it like that, I think you're not only doing your partner a disservice, the game a disservice, but you're doing yourself a disservice as well.
Yeah. So when you finally got you got a number assigned to you by Major League Baseball. So probably before that, you're probably thinking your evaluations are pretty good. Hey, I might have a shot here. It has to go through your mind, right? You kind of know where you feel.
Yeah, I mean, this job is an absolute roller coaster.
Right.
10 years, I've felt the highest of highs and I've felt the lowest of lows.
Okay.
I went through a stretch in AAA for 3.5 seasons where I didn't get an invitation to the Arizona Fall League to take that next step to potentially get a number and work in the big leagues as a call-up umpire. And it was after that.
You've been there before.
Well, no, I'm saying this is from 2014 to 2017. I hadn't gotten a chance. out of AAA, and I was, facing retention. I was staring down the barrel of, being released. And, that was probably the lowest I'd ever been, but, just like anything, it's how you respond. How do you react? How do you pick yourself up by the bootstraps and you carry forward? And, that's exactly what I did. And moving into 2017, had a great year and, was recognized, had that invitation after, actually at umpire school that January. So January of 18, Rich Reeker always comes down for a visit one day at umpire school, just to see how everything's going. And he actually announced to the class that day that both myself and Jeremy Rahak had been invited to Major League Spring Training and had full schedules to Major League Spring. So that was pretty neat. Then obviously went to spring, Major League Spring in 2018. And at the end of spring, got that phone call from Rich Reeker that, you kind of wait for as a AAA guy. And he'd informed me that, I'd been given a number and was eligible to work big league games that year.
So now the hard work begins, I guess.
Yeah.
To keep that number.
Yeah, exactly. So after, 8 years of work, now the real work's just beginning.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about, I was going to talk about, you're now hired full-time. Okay, so congratulations. You have a number.
Thank you.
You've retained that number, put it that way.
I have retained that number.
And you got to work some spring games this year. And then we all know what happened. The world shut down.
Right.
So I can't ask you what it was like, because we'd be in the season right now. I can't ask you what it was like to work your first plate job or your first MLB game as a full-time staff member. So I can't ask you that. So I'm going to go back a couple of years, and it's close to my heart because it happened in Toronto. But tell me about Tuesday, April 17th, Kansas City at the Toronto Blue Jays.
Man, April 17th, 2018 is certainly a day I'll never forget. The day before, I had been in AAA down. I was in Buffalo. We had gotten a nasty, nasty ice storm, and they actually canceled the whole series. So they canceled 4 days. This was the first day of the series. They had canceled all 4, told the team to get out of town. So we went back to the hotel and we were just hanging out. I was hanging out with the crew I was working with at the time, and my phone rang and it was Rich Reeker. And he said, well, this is the phone call you've been waiting for. The ice fell off the CN Tower and pierced the roof at the Rogers Center.
Yep.
So they canceled the game tonight. They're going to play a doubleheader tomorrow. So go ahead and rent a car and drive up to Toronto. You'll make your debut tomorrow. So it all went down very quick, but kind of a strange happenstance that a piece of ice pierces a roof in a dome. So my debut is a doubleheader in a dome.
Wow. I remember when you were in Buffalo, because that same weekend, Lake Erie was still frozen.
Yeah.
It was absolutely, like, I remember that.
Frozen solid.
Sandra and I had gone down a week after that, and it was still frozen, and it was crazy. And we got snowed out one night in Buffalo. So yeah, so that's your debut.
Yep.
And and it's kind of weird because I asked you in Florida, we had that 5 minutes together, and I said, hey, how many games you got now? And you said 250 on the button. Yep. And I went, wow, that's like a full season in 2 years for a call-up. That's really good.
Yeah. It's like anything in life. I've been very blessed when it comes to the timing of getting that number and coming in at a time when they needed some help. And obviously they knew that, maybe the staff was getting to be a little more veteran, and that possibly there were some retirements on the horizon and they needed to get some guys some games. And I came along, and man, 108 games my first season, 142 my second. I didn't spend much time in the minor leagues the last 2 years. And, a lot of it is being blessed and fortunate when it comes to the timing. But I think the other half of it too is that you're prepared to seize the opportunity when that time does arrive.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen every time Jeremy Riak got sent back down, it seemed like he would end up in Buffalo. And then he'd be on a crew that I knew really well. So he would come into town and he'd grab the plate right away and give the guys a night off. And again, being a team guy, like he just flew in from LA and he's going to work a plate that afternoon. So yeah. And then he'll be done in a couple of days.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where it was done for us. We're just passing it along. I mean, it's the right thing to do. You come in and give the boys a night off and, let their legs take off, from a night from the plate work and, then go out and maybe have some dinner, a couple of drinks. And
it gets expensive, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But you know what? It's all worth it because it was done for me. And I remember the first time I had the opportunity to do that, being in that role. And I looked forward to doing that because I knew it had been done for me. So I look forward to passing that forward.
Wow. So obviously right now we don't know what's going to happen, but you're just getting, how long were you in Arizona? Like 10 days?
No, I think we were probably there for 2.5 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, 2.5, maybe close to 3 weeks.
Well, I was actually flying out to watch the World Baseball Classic qualifier because a couple of my friends are umpiring in it. And
right.
Great Britain was actually participating in it. So I knew some guys on that team. And then I was booking the flight on Monday morning and they canceled it just before I clicked the mouse and said, I'll take that ticket. So yeah, and I know some umpires who traveled, minor league guys, and actually they got turned around right away when they got there. So,
yeah, I talked to a couple of minor league guys that had texted me when they landed in Arizona, and no sooner they were picking their bags up that they were checking them right back in and getting on a plane and going back to wherever they came from.
Well, yeah, it's been crazy. So like now 250 games in the major leagues, and then going back a bit, like you were actually the first base umpire in the Futures game at Target Field.
Yeah, 2014.
Right, and like I remember Malachi, he did that game also, and like a different one, but it's like it's amazing how many you can see the stepping stones to get there. Every condition has to be met or passed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's pretty neat, and I think the Futures game is one of those things for guys in AA. It's kind of one of those carrots they dangle in front of you, and it's a goal that you should set out for yourself if you're currently working in AA or whenever you do work in AA. Obviously it's an honor to work it, but it's just such a neat event. I was able to have my family come out, my mom, my stepdad, my dad, my stepmom, and my uncle, and my cousin. They were all able to come out and share in the experience, and Major League Baseball does a great job in taking care of us and what we needed and our families' needs. And I couldn't have been more fortunate to be a part of such a great event.
Well, I'm sitting there watching TV last year, the Jays game, and I'm thinking, man, I know that plate guy. It's you. So I'm thinking, oh, is he mad at me or what? So I call, I send you a text. I go, hey, dude, you're in Toronto. I want to see you. And then you obviously had a lot of family in because it was your first time up. So yeah, right. I understood that. But like next time you're in Toronto, let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take care of you.
Yeah, we got some good umpires up here. I'd like to bring them down and let them see what a day's like MLB umpire.
Absolutely. It's a good life. Absolutely, no doubt about it.
I liked it because you never see your luggage.
It's an added perk.
It's kind of weird. I was asking Joe West. It was one of those nights where he just said, "You can ask me anything you want." So I said, "Okay, what are you going to miss most about being a major league umpire?" And he looked at me.
I bet you I know his answer.
Free golf.
Yep, that's golf. Exactly what I thought.
And that would be like knowing him now the way I know him. It's like that's the perfect answer. It's the only answer that makes sense. So, Hey, you want to take some questions?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Tommy?
All right. Our first question tonight is from Daniel Michael. What was it like getting the call that you were a full-time umpire, and how did you handle the emotions?
Yeah, obviously a day we all wait for, we dream of. So we had flown to, well, I guess this past spring training in February, we flew to, all the call-ups flew to Florida for a kind of a 2.5 day kind of retreat, mini retreat, new rules, physicals, vision tests, the whole 9 yards. So we left there on a Saturday, I believe. Yeah, it was a Saturday. We flew to Arizona, landed late at night on a Saturday. Sunday, woke up, actually had poured down overnight and was continuing to rain. I know, weird rain in Arizona, but I got a phone call around 10 a.m. that said we had been rained out. So I was obviously very excited. The first day of spring training, rain out. About an hour later, Rich Reeker had called me, so picked it up, and he said, hey, I got a schedule change for you. So inside, I didn't say anything to him, but inside I'm like, oh, man, just when you think you're off the hook. And he said, hang on, give me a second. Let me find the change. There's so many rainouts. And when he came back on, he had patched in Chris Young, Matt McKendry, and Peter Woodfork. And when I heard their voices, I knew what was coming. So obviously after speaking with those guys for a little bit, got off that call and really didn't know what to do. The first thing I did was call my mom, and told her the good news that the dream had come true, and we both shared some tears over the news. And after I spoke with her, I called my dad, and called my girlfriend. So yeah, pretty neat. Certainly a day I'll never forget.
You can actually see it on your face, the pride, the relief, the man, I did it. Like you can just see it on your face right now. It's like, it's real, it's genuine, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, when you set a goal for yourself, and obviously this goal for me was set, almost 20 years ago, and you're able to accomplish it. There is a sense of pride that you take in that, and obviously, the odds aren't that great to accomplish something like this. So to be able to accomplish that is pretty cool, and something no one will ever be able to take away from you. So.
More questions, Tommy?
Sure. So this next question is an amalgamation of a couple of questions. So I'm going to paraphrase it to get it all done.
That's a good word, Tommy.
Yeah, I've been waiting for a couple of years to use that. So this is coming from Tony Hare, Clay Doyle, and David Loudermilk. So the basis of their question is take a couple of weeks out of the season when you're doing your MLB travel and kind of explain what your week is like, and then on game day morning, what it's like and what you kind of do in your downtime.
Sure. A typical series for us, I would say, if, let's say it ended, I'll take you through a whole week. Let's say our last series ended on a Sunday, what we call getaway day. Probably a day game unless you have the Sunday night game. So you work that game, and normally we have about 3 or 4 flights booked in case the game goes extra innings. Obviously, we're the only sport that, we always joke about it. Once you open that umpire locker room door and shut it to go out on the field, you don't really know when you're coming back. So we book multiple flights. After that game's over, we'll go ahead and get changed, pack all our stuff up, and we'll hop in the car, head to the airport, fly out, land in the next city. Typically, if that would be Sunday night, we might grab a quick bite to eat and then head to bed. I'll probably wake up the next morning. I'm typically a sleeper, so I'll probably sleep in a little bit. Probably wake up around 10 or 11. Maybe go get a quick bite to eat, come back, probably take a quick nap before the game, and then head over to the ballpark. At the time when I was going up and down, obviously it's the crew chief's discretion what time he wants to show up. So I would say anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours early is probably about average, and play some cards and then get ready to go out there and work. So I would say maybe once a series if the weather is nice and you're with somebody that likes to play golf, I'll try and sneak off and play a round of golf with somebody. But as much as we travel and the time frames that we have to travel, I don't think a lot of us carry our clubs anymore. There's only probably a select few that do.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeff Rose has kind of a good question here. You probably know that name.
Yeah,
he
very
said,
familiar.
Yeah, he said, do you still run around gas stations and do jumping jacks during pit stops on road trips?
That's a little inside joke. It goes back to our college days.
So let's get down to another good question. What's been your favorite?
These questions, Tommy?
I did. That's why I didn't really give you a chance to answer it. So the next one is from Kyle Albert. What is your favorite memory or game so far on the MLB level?
Wow, favorite game or memory? I think at this point of my career, it's so young. I don't really think I've had the opportunity to be a part of such great events. But, I think obviously the biggest or the best game is probably my first one. Being able to put in 9 years of work or 8 years of work at the time, and then, starting to see your fruits of labor, starting to see that come to fruition is very special, and it means a lot. So I would say definitely probably the first one, at least at this point in my career.
So you didn't run Gibbons in your first game in Toronto, right?
No, that was later in the season in Yankee Stadium.
Oh, that's right.
Although I'll tell you, it almost feels like a rite of passage for a young guy with Gibby.
But like every time I watch one of his ejections, it's almost like he's laughing about it.
Yeah.
Like
he's a good dude. I don't have anything bad to say about him.
I agree. I've talked to him a few times in Toronto, and it's like, and when I was in Florida, and he just loves the game. And when he has to bark at you, he's going to bark at you. But like every time I see him get ejected, it's almost like he's go ahead and do it. I don't care.
Yeah, and that's fair. That's his job. That's part of his job.
Sure. Tommy?
All right. So from our guest tomorrow night, Kelly Elliott Dine, what are some techniques that you use to calm yourself when handling conflict, like the angry manager is hustling towards you?
First off, hi, Kelly. How are you? Hope you're doing well. Kelly went to umpire school a couple years ago. So, I don't know what kind of techniques I use, to be honest with you. I'm such a calm person to begin with. I don't really get too upset about anything. It really takes quite a bit to get me riled up. And then obviously once you get me riled up, it's not usually very pretty, but it usually takes quite a bit. I think one technique that I do use though in arguments is that when they are venting or they are, yelling or screaming or whatever they feel like they have to do, I'll just let them go. Just let them get it off their chest, because sometimes all they want to do is just yell and scream. There's nothing behind it. So I think that's a technique that all of us could use. I tell a lot of young guys who are looking for advice how to become better both on and off the field. And I always tell them that, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So, I think it's better to do a lot of listening. And in that case, with the argument, I don't even think you're listening to it. I think you're just letting him burn himself out and letting him feel like he got his point across.
I got a question, Tommy. We had Greg Gibson on last week, and we talked about replay. And we kind of came to the consensus that a new guy like you, it's always been there. So it's really nothing new to you, whereas the older guys, when it first started, it took them a while to get used to it. So I talked to a few young guys like yourself, and Will Little gave me the best answer ever. He said, Ray, I actually can learn from replay. So how do you feel about replay?
I'm a fan of it. You'll never get me to say a bad word about replay. Our goal is to get the call right.
Yep.
I can tell you just from, 8, 9, 10 years of working in the minor leagues that there's nobody sicker leaving the ballpark than an umpire if they know they missed the call. So let's take, it is the 21st century. Let's take advantage of the technology that we have and let's put it to use, and let's make sure that we get that call correct. So I'm okay with it. I'll never bash replay.
Perfect. Tommy?
All right. So this comes from Simon Rebello. What is the best advice for someone wanting to go to umpire school and wants to work professional baseball?
Take the plunge. Just go. Half the battle is getting yourself there mentally. This job can change your life for the better, no matter what happens, whether you get whether you advance on to the development course or whether you're, not selected and go back and work amateur baseball. You will make friends and you will create bonds that will last the rest of your life, no matter whether you make it or not. It is a special 5 weeks. We cram a lot of information and a lot of work in. But the best advice I can give for you is just take the plunge. I'll see you in January.
All right.
Oh,
We've had a couple people ask this question. So Chad Bush was the first one to ask it. First, he congratulates you for getting
thank you,
the
Chad.
call up. Will you continue to be the lead field instructor at Wendelstedt now that you are an MLB full time?
I will. For the time being. I don't really have a time frame for how long I'll be there, and it's not something that Hunter and I have really discussed. I don't really think that's at the forefront of where our minds are. I think we're focused on the 2021 umpire school class and putting together the best possible program we can come next January.
Great. And then I've got kind of the last question on that has come through the group here from Lewis Nickerson. Lewis is somebody we're all familiar with, by the way. What is the best advice you've received from an MLB umpire, and who gave you that advice?
great.
I don't know if you want to put anybody on the
Wow.
spot with that or not.
That's great. That's a great question. I don't think I'll put the umpire on the spot. But I was given a very valuable piece of information by a very senior member of the staff. And it had nothing to do with baseball. That's the best part of this, is that it came to how to conduct yourself like a major league umpire. And yes, we all conduct ourselves, and he just gave me slight pointers. We all conduct ourselves in professional manners as umpires coming up through the system. But it's the little details. It's the little things. For me, like I fly with a sports coat. You'll see a lot of guys that'll wear jeans and a golf shirt. For me, it might sound silly to some guys, but I'm not quite concerned with it because it's something that I believe in and it works for me. So, I'll wear a sport coat on the plane. I will always listen to every crew member I ever work with. I think that, and I think this is kind of where his point was headed, was that no matter who you work with, whether you're in the big leagues, whether you're in AAA, AA, single A, whether you're working Division I baseball, Division II, JUCO, high school, varsity, junior varsity, it doesn't matter what level you're working. Every partner you work with, you can learn something from. So I think the point of his speech was to be a sponge, but that you can learn something from everyone you work with. And it might not even be positive. Maybe it's seeing something and say, I don't know if I would do that, but you're learning and you're continually learning and you're building upon the things that you've already learned and the fundamentals of our profession. We're never going to be perfect, but we're always going to strive for it.
So you're 10 years ahead of the next kid graduating umpire school. You made it. You're okay with replay. Where are you on robotic strikes and balls?
It's like I said, technology is what it is. I like the technology to get me out of jams like that. I don't really know how baseball intends to implement this technology into the game. They haven't, as far as I know, they haven't made any official or formal proposals to our union. But I think it's an experiment that once people see, they might second guess. But I don't know. Maybe not.
Well,
I think only time will tell.
I get, like, obviously, from what I've read, the union has agreed to help develop it. That's probably a
Yeah,
positive
listen,
thing, right?
yeah, absolutely. We're willing to cooperate with their implementation.
Nice. Anything, Tommy?
All right. So I have one last question, and this is kind of an interesting one. What was the process like transitioning to three-man mechanics when you moved from the level from two-man to three-man? That's from Jake Block.
Good question.
Yeah, great question. So I got promoted. I was an off-season promotion, 2012 going into 13. I got promoted from high A to double A. But that fall, I had been invited to Arizona for the instructional league, which is where we'll go to learn our three-man mechanics. So, I probably worked 20 games of three-man out there. I worked another handful or so in the following spring, minor league spring training. But I would say that I wasn't entirely comfortable with that system until probably midway point of that season. Until I felt very comfortable in knowing the ins and outs and the minute details of that system. So it takes quite a while for you to get comfortable in knowing, and especially if you're not working with the same partners, it becomes even more difficult because in two-man you're only reading one partner, whereas in three-man now you're reading two other partners. So if you don't have that chemistry with guys, then you may not know kind of what their tendencies are.
What do you got, Tommy? Anything?
That's it for now.
Wow. Are you, you've obviously done other things other than Wendelstadt. You've participated locally in your state at clinics, and are you going to keep doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to keep doing it all. I'm a firm believer in continuing to give back to not only this game, but this profession. I'm very passionate about what I do. I love what I do. And I'm here to make anyone and everyone better. If I have the opportunity to do so, I'm going to take full advantage.
That's what we love about our page. We have so many people contributing, and it's kind of cool where I can call an MLB guy up and say, I'd really like you to do this. I think you'd be great. And everyone's been fantastic. And tomorrow night I have 3 ladies on there. And when I read their bio, I was talking to you earlier. When I read their bios, I went, I don't know if I'm even going to talk about umpiring because their backstory is unbelievable.
It's impressive.
And
it's impressive.
I'm just blown away by what they've done outside of baseball. And that's hard enough to carve that career out. And now they're carving their own niche as a baseball umpire. And
absolutely,
you know what? You ran into roadblocks. So did I. So did Tommy. So did everybody. And these girls have just been outnumbered, but they're breaking barriers. So
absolutely.
And I saw
they need them. They're trailblazers.
I saw some girls down in Florida, and I remember one girl. She stood out because she looked the part. This past winter, and I went, wow, she's pretty good. Yeah. I think she's going to work the Pecos League, but
I'm telling you, there will be a female MLB umpire someday. It will happen. That's just my personal belief. That's nothing that I know or don't know. That's just my personal belief. And they can do it
too.
It can be done.
Like when I look at these 3 ladies, their resumes, like I think I work at a pretty good level here in Canada, and I like doing what I do. And I look at their resumes, and especially one of my mentors, Lisa Turbot. I look at what she's done over, 40 years of umpiring, and all those barriers and mountains that they climbed. And it blows me away that I'm happy where I'm working now. I got to a level. I'm in that program. She encouraged me to get into it. Imagine that, a girl encouraging me to go into the Baseball Canada program,
right?
And actually mentoring me. So I'm going, she's an umpire. I never look at the gender anymore. And if they can work, they should be able to work at the highest level of baseball. And that means, like you said, there probably will be a female umpire in the show one day.
Yep. And if you can work, you can work.
Right. I've said that a million times, and if you can do it, you can do it. And there should be no barriers, in that spot. And there's some, we got Jen Powell and Emma working right now in minor league baseball, and hopefully they keep progressing up the ladder. And, whether they get to wherever they get to, as long as it was a fair shot, that's all that matters. As long as they're not promoted because they are girls, if they got to AAA and they could work and they just couldn't get to the next level, man, that's still an unbelievable accomplishment.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. I think all of us, all we ever ask as umpires, no matter what level you're working, is to just give me a fair shake. Just give me a fair shot.
Tommy, how we doing there, buddy?
We're 46 minutes in, sir.
Any questions?
Nothing recent.
Well, what do you want to do?
So y'all ready to take us home?
I think we're going to have to. You know what? I thought there's going to be a lot more questions, but there isn't. But I think we've covered a lot of ground. Great backstory.
I got to be honest, he answered a lot during his interview that I think people would ask him. It was really good.
Yeah, it was. You know what? The questions were good. And we covered MLB debut. And you know what? Let's do it again, Jansen, when you actually do your first one as a full-time staff member.
Absolutely. I'm in. Anytime I'd love to come back anytime you invited me.
We'll have you back as many times as you want. And maybe we'll do a live interview in Toronto one day.
That sounds great. That'd be
so
awesome.
Look, buddy, I want to thank you for your time. Congratulations. Every time I've been down there in Florida, you've always given a lot of valuable time to talk to me. We talk baseball, we talk about life, and everything else is great. So thanks for doing this, man. I really appreciate it. And again, from everybody at Life Nation, congratulations, man.
Absolutely. No problem. No problem, Ray. And I appreciate everything you guys do for me, and just happy to return the favor. So I'm glad to see you guys are doing well and you're safe and healthy. And Tommy, same to you. And just appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, buddy.
Yep. Take care, guys.
All right, folks, that's a wrap. We'll see you tomorrow night when we have Perry Barber, Lisa Turbot, and Kelly Elliott Dine. It is called Gotta Ask, Outnumbered, Breaking Barriers. See you tomorrow, folks.
We would like to thank you for joining us for tonight's broadcast of Gotta Ask, featuring our guest, professional baseball umpire Jansen Visconti. Please join us again on April 23rd at 8 p.m. for Outnumbered and Breaking Barriers, when our guest will be baseball umpires Perry Barber, Lisa Turbot, and Kelly Dine. Have a good evening, and may you and your family be safe and healthy. Good night.